Welcome to the new video. In this recap, on the road to San Diego, Cal is traveling by car with his sister, Becky, who is about to have a baby. However, the young woman begins to feel ill and her brother is forced to stop the car in the middle of the road between an old church and a huge cornfield. As soon as Becky feels better, Cal tells them to continue their journey, but suddenly, they both hear a young man calling for help. He says his name is Tobin, and his voice comes from inside the cornfield, along with a woman's voice, telling the young man to be quiet. The siblings begin to think that the young man is being abused by his mother and decide to enter the cornfield to help him. Cal goes ahead, with Becky following close behind, but it doesn't take long for the two to get lost in the huge field. After searching for a few minutes, Cal begins to think that the young man's voice is getting farther and farther away, and decides to return to the road with Becky. He then asks his sister to keep talking so he can find her by the sound, but Cal has the impression that her voice is coming from several directions. Becky thinks it's best for them to jump at the same time, so they'll know for sure how far apart they are. Cal agrees, and as soon as they both jump, they realize they are very close to each other. To be sure, Becky decides to jump again, but when she does, her brother appears many meters away. Frightened, Cal runs through the cornfield to find his sister, but ends up tripping and falling into a mud puddle. As he gets up, he sees several flies around the body of a dog, with a collar that reads Freddy. Cal is frightened and calls for his sister, but she calms him down, telling them to keep walking until they find a way out of the cornfield. After several attempts, the sun begins to set, and the effort makes Becky feel weaker and weaker. However, she hears Cal's voice approaching and runs towards him, but instead of him, a mysterious man appears, who introduces himself as Ross, a real estate agent. He says he is Tobin's father and has been looking for his family for hours, but got lost in the cornfield. Becky says she is also looking for her brother, and Ross decides to accompany her, as the young woman cannot risk going out alone in these conditions. Meanwhile, Cal continues to search for his sister, but after hours of searching, night falls and there is no sign of Becky anywhere. About to give up, he sits on the ground to rest for a while, when he hears Tobin's voice once again. Soon after, the boy appears holding the body of a crow and says that the perished are not taken by the cornfield. Cal doesn't understand what he means and asks how the young man ended up there, with Tobin saying that he entered the cornfield with his family after hearing a man call for help. Now they are trapped in this place, and very soon, everyone will be eliminated, including Cal's sister Becky. The young man asks how he knows about the girl, and Tobin reveals that he found a mysterious rock capable of passing on all the information about what happens in that place. To prove it, the boy tells Cal to follow him, and the two set off together in search of this rock. Far away, Becky and Ross continue to walk through the huge field, and the man asks why her husband is not with her. The young woman is bothered by the question, as the father of her unborn child has left her. Ross is sorry to hear this, but promises the young woman that the two of them will find a way out so that she can enjoy motherhood. The man then moves on, but he goes too far ahead and disappears into the field, leaving Becky alone. To make matters worse, the young woman finds a bag with makeup items on the ground, as well as a lock of hair that appears to have been forcibly removed. This only makes Becky even more nervous, and she screams for her brother, but instead, a mysterious woman appears right next to her. At the same time, Cal continues to follow Tobin until the two finally find the huge rock in the center of the cornfield. At that moment, Cal feels a strange force pulling him, and tries to approach the rock, which has strange drawings on it. Unable to control his actions, he tries to touch the rock, but before he can, Cal hears Becky's screams and goes after her. The next morning, a young musician named Travis drives down the same road and stops at a gas station. He is actually Becky's ex-boyfriend, and he shows a photo of her and her brother to the gas station owner, but she says she doesn't know them. Even so, Travis continues his search until he sees the church on the road, with several vehicles parked around it. One of them is Cal's car, but he finds it covered in dust, with a spoiled sandwich on the driver's seat, as if the vehicle had been there for months. Confused, Travis goes to look inside the church, but the place appears to have been abandoned for a long time. He then goes to check the cornfield, and just ahead, he finds a book lying on the ground, with Becky's signature on one of the pages. Believing that the two siblings are lost in the field, Travis decides to go in, but to avoid getting lost himself, he starts tying knots in the cornstalks. The problem is that, mysteriously, the plants undo these knots without him noticing. Minutes later, Travis continues to walk through the cornfield, but notices something strange when he sees the sun change position in the sky, just like that. Despite this, he continues to walk through the field, but like everyone else who has entered that place, Travis ends up getting lost. At dusk, he tries to rest a little when Tobin appears, saying he knows who he is. Travis has no idea who the young man is, but asks for his help in finding his ex-girlfriend Becky, who must be lost in the cornfield. Tobin says he knows where she is and tells him to follow him until they reach a foul-smelling stretch of the road. Shortly after, Travis finds Becky's body lying on the ground, indicating that she lost her life a long time ago. The young man cries over her body, but now all he can do is wait until the next day to find his way back to the road. As soon as dawn breaks, Travis decides to leave, but first he takes a necklace with a crab-shaped pendant from Becky's pocket. Soon after, he hears the voices of other people far away, one of them identical to Tobin's. He then asks the boy for help to get out of there, but it is revealed that Tobin is outside the cornfield, along with his mother Natalie, his father Ross, and their pet dog Freddy. Somehow, time and space, inside and outside the cornfield, work in different ways. Because of this, while Travis is in the present, Tobin and his family are in the past, at the exact moment they stopped on the road and found the cornfield. Upon hearing Travis's voice, the dog runs toward the field, followed by Tobin. Ross, who was talking on his cell phone, sees his wife calling for help, and the two rush to bring their son back. But they also get stuck in the cornfield. When night falls, Ross also loses his wife and tries to stay calm, but hours have passed and he continues to walk in circles. With no hope of getting out, he ends up finding the center of the cornfield, where he comes across the huge rock. Ross is surprised to see the large structure, but when he touches it, he feels a strange energy in his body. Another day passes and Travis continues to search for a way out, when suddenly he hears Cal and Becky's voices. It seems that they are repeating the moment when they entered the field and heard Tobin's voice calling for help. However, this time, Travis, Cal, and Becky finally meet, with Tobin appearing shortly thereafter. The young woman is surprised to see her ex-boyfriend and asks why he followed her there. Travis then reveals that Becky and Cal never made it to San Diego, and after 2 months without news, he decided to go look for them on his own. Cal says that doesn't make sense, as they left the city only 2 days ago. Although everything only gets more confusing, Becky says they need to get out of there as soon as possible, so Travis has the idea of putting Tobin on his shoulders so he can see if there is a way out. In the middle of the vast cornfield, the boy sees a building in the distance, and they all head in that direction. On the way, Becky remembers that she brought her cell phone, but when she picks it up, the device suffers interference, and the young woman begins to feel strong contractions. Travis asks if she is okay, with Becky saying that he doesn't need to worry, as there are still 3 months to go before the birth of his daughter. She says she has chosen the name Ginny and asks Travis to feel her belly, which moves him. The moment is soon interrupted, as they need to keep going, but the long walk makes Becky feel sick, and she ends up fainting. Cal and Travis try to help her, but Ross appears unexpectedly and, with no time to lose, performs CPR on the girl. Thanks to this, Becky regains consciousness, and Ross is relieved to see his son again. Travis then says that they are heading towards a building they found, but when he lifts Tobin onto his shoulders again, the place has disappeared. The group has no choice but to look for another way out, but Ross says he has found a route they can take. They all walk for the rest of the day, but instead of the exit, they arrive at the center of the cornfield, with the huge rock standing before them. Ross explains that this rock is extremely old, with inscriptions that appear to have been made by ancient native peoples. Becky, however, is not interested in this and asks where the route that would lead them to the exit is. Ross reveals that the only way out is to touch the rock, as it has the power to reveal the path. He then asks Cal to be the first to touch it, but just as he is about to do so, Natalie, Tobin's mother, appears on the scene. Ross is happy to see his wife again, but Natalie tells him to stay away and tells everyone that the place is dangerous. Ross becomes enraged, saying that the rock is a divine entity capable of purifying the soul of those who touch it and offering great wisdom. For this reason, he insists that everyone extend their hands to the rock, but Becky begins to have a strange vision. In it, Ross appears in the middle of the cornfield, controlled by a dark force. Frightened, she asks Cal and the others to leave, but Ross protests, warning that he will stop them by force. Seeing that the man is not trustworthy, Travis advances toward him, but Ross possesses extraordinary strength, and in addition to knocking him to the ground, he dislocates his shoulder. Tobin is frightened and tries to run away with his mother, but Ross grabs Natalie and destroys her head with his bare hands. Ross tells his son not to worry, because inside the cornfield, the body is just matter, and they can lose their lives and return to life several times. However, this only terrifies the group even more, and they flee, with Cal and Travis carrying Becky. To Tobin's surprise, he finds his dog Freddy, who guides him along a new path through the cornfield. Thanks to him, the group finds an old bowling alley and hides inside, but they know that Ross will come after them very soon. Cal rushes to let his sister rest for a while and blames Travis for everything that is happening, because if he hadn't rejected Becky, none of them would be in this cornfield. However, Travis argues that even though he tried hard, neither Cal nor his parents accepted him as part of the family. The argument continues, and the two start fighting, but seconds later, they hear banging on the door, with Ross trying to break in. The group then runs toward the roof of the bowling alley, and once there, Cal and Travis see Freddy walking around. Suddenly, the dog goes to an isolated cornstalk and disappears, reappearing on the other side of the cornfield. Everything indicates that there are flaws around the field that could serve as portals to take them to the exit. Travis suggests that the group follow the dog, but he ends up losing his balance on the edge of the roof and is caught by Cal. However, Cal still resents Travis, and in an act of selfishness, he lets him fall. What he didn't count on was that Tobin saw everything, but it doesn't take long for Ross to get through the door, forcing the group to flee again. Cal then calls Tobin and Becky to leave the bowling alley, but the young woman realizes that Travis is not there and asks what happened. Her brother says there is no time for that and that it is better for her to leave Travis alone, as he abandoned her and her daughter. However, Becky realizes that her brother is hiding something and leaves, returning to the cornfield. Cal apologizes and tries to go after her, but is captured by Ross, who pins him to the ground and starts to choke him, giving him no chance to resist. Nearby, Travis survives the fall, and as soon as he can get up, he sets off in search of Tobin and Becky. Upon entering the cornfield, he hears the young woman's voice, and even though he can't see her, he apologizes, saying that Cal was right and that it was all his fault. However, Becky says she was traveling to San Diego because when her daughter was born, she intended to give her up for adoption. But now that the two are together again, they can raise her, and so they try to hold hands. However, Becky is stopped by Ross, who, overcome by a sinister force, tries to take advantage of the young woman. Luckily, she finds Natalie's makeup kit on the floor, and among the items is a pair of scissors, which Becky uses to stab the man in the eye. Ross writhes in pain, and Becky takes the chance to escape, but a heavy rain begins to fall on the cornfield. With the ground covered in mud, the young woman can barely move, and suddenly, she begins to see strange shapes around her. Upon closer inspection, she encounters humanoid creatures with faces made of dirt and grass. Becky tries to escape again, but is captured by the entities, who take her to the center of the cornfield. Shortly after, Becky wakes up in front of a huge rock and sees something strange in its inscriptions. They show individuals lifting a pregnant woman and removing her baby, which, upon birth, is used in a type of sacrificial ritual. Becky is frightened by these images, and to her horror, her contractions grow stronger and stronger. She soon realizes that she is going into labor, and at that very moment, a hole opens in front of the rock, revealing several babies next to the roots of the soil. Amidst this chaos, Becky feels deep pain, but soon after, she hears Cal's voice, trying to help her with the delivery. The extreme pain causes her to faint, but minutes later, she wakes up in the middle of the cornfield, with Cal saying that her daughter has been born. Becky asks her brother to give her baby, but first, Cal says she needs to eat and regain her strength. He then gives her some water, and soon after, begins to put food in her mouth, with a taste Becky has never experienced before. After eating everything, the young woman asks what it was, and Cal says it was something from the earth. However, Becky feels that it is blood, and when she looks to the side, she comes face to face with a small lifeless body. And then Cal transforms into Ross and knocks her unconscious again. Meanwhile, Travis is looking for Becky when he finally finds her unconscious next to the huge rock. In addition, he does not feel the baby in her belly, indicating that the child did not survive childbirth. Travis cries when he realizes what has happened, and Tobin appears before him, saying that his father did this to Becky, and Cal has also been eliminated. The young man says that Ross will continue to eliminate everyone in the cornfield, and this cycle will never end. However, Travis hugs the boy and says he won't let anyone hurt him. Then, gathering his courage, he starts shouting for Ross, saying he intends to end this once and for all. However, Ross appears behind Travis and knocks him to the ground with one blow. He then begins to push his head into the mud, trying to eliminate him, but fortunately Travis manages to resist and kicks the man away. Despite the blow, Ross feels no damage, and then sticks his arm into the mud. From inside it, he pulls out a bone and uses it to defend himself, knocking Travis down with a blow and then hitting his stomach with the sharp part of the bone. Finally, Ross says he regrets doing this, as he wanted to give everyone the chance to touch the rock and be redeemed for their sins. However, within the cornfield, there will always be another chance, so he leaves Travis lying on the ground to perish and moves toward Tobin. The young man tries to escape, but his father catches him and begins to pull his arm toward the rock. Soon, Tobin will also be controlled by the evil energy, but in a surprise attack, Becky gets up and hits Ross in the eye with her necklace pendant. This leaves the villain completely blind, and Travis takes the chance to push the man's head against the rock. Even wounded, Ross continues to resist, but Travis pulls out one of the corn cobs and, using all his strength, squeezes the villain's neck, who cannot resist and loses his life. After this confrontation, Travis runs towards Becky, who tragically used her last strength and also succumbed to her injuries. With nothing left to lose, he decides to touch the rock, but Tobin tries to stop him, saying that if he does so, he will be trapped in the cornfield forever. However, Travis doesn't care and reaches out his hand toward the rock, with the energy inside it being absorbed by his body. After that, Tobin calls out for Travis, who despite being connected to the rock's energy, still retains part of his humanity. Thanks to the knowledge he has gained, he shows the boy the way out and gives him Becky's necklace. As Tobin warned him, he will be trapped in the cornfield, but he has the chance to end the cycle and save the lives of the young man, Cal, and Becky. Now it's up to Tobin to stop them from entering the cornfield, and then Travis transports him out of there. Seconds later, Tobin is taken to a room inside the old church on the road. Upon leaving, the boy sees Cal and Becky's car, with the two listening to the boy's voice calling for help from inside the cornfield. However, following Travis's advice, the young man runs towards them and stops them from entering, saying that if they take another step, they will never get out of there. The boy's voice continues to call from inside the cornfield, and Cal decides to go anyway, but Tobin shows Becky the necklace Travis gave him. Upon seeing the crab pendant, Becky realizes that the young man was telling the truth and calls her brother to come back right away. Cal obeys, and his sister tells them to go back to town and go to the police station to get help for Tobin. Cal asks if she really intends to go back, and Becky replies that she does, and that she has decided to raise her daughter. The three then leave, leaving the cornfield behind and ending the cycle of the deceased. As for Travis, he is happy to have saved Becky's life and the lives of the others, but it costs him his own life, and he falls to the ground, his body hidden forever in the endless cornfield. Subscribe for more recap videos.